Hey, welcome to another episode of Venture Prints, a YouTube series where I dive into some photos I've taken throughout the years that I thought were pretty cool and give some insight into where I took them, when I took them, and why I thought they were interesting photos. I've always been someone who enjoyed photos, but when I scroll through my personal photos and I'm like, oh, I went to a Vegas that time or wherever, I like to look at them. I always think about like when would he take that? Who was with us? What happened before or after that photo that was funny or interesting, and so that's how I've always looked at them. I've been into photography since I've been in high school. Whenever I took a graphic arts class in high school, and my school actually had a dark room, so I learned how to actually develop my photos rather than take them in, and then it continued into community college where I took a few photography classes as well. I've had some small success in selling few here and there, and even last year had one selected in a contest to be on the in an art museum on Mackinac Island for the summer. So that was very fun. I wanted to challenge myself in 2026 to post videos twice a week throughout the year where I talk about a photo I've taken and it corresponds with a post I made on Instagram with the same photo. So let's get into it. The photo for today. Let's get the photo first before we do the so there it is. Now, if you've been watching any of these episodes, one part of the series, one I do two a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, and one of the episodes each week has kind of been following along my comedy trip from 2022, where me and my buddies drove around the country in a minivan and told jokes in all 50 states. And the other was following along kind of with a trip I went on to Montana in 2020. But at some point, they will merge into just cool photos I've taken, and is also talking about me being on Mackinac Island the last 3 years. This awesome tourist island in northern Michigan. If you're not familiar, it's beautiful and a great place to take photos. But this one falls along the lines of the 2022 trip around the country. And I haven't taken I the last one I posted from that trip was in Fort Myers, Florida. And believe it or not, I did this was a few weeks after that, and I just didn't have a photo I enjoyed enough to share here up until here, which was in February 2 or sorry, this was taken on Monday, February 28th 2022 at 6:16 PM on the corner of Queen and State Street in Charleston, South Carolina. That was a super fun time. Very lucky to have some friends with hookups, and this was one of them. Mostly on this trip, we were staying either in KOAs or very cheap hotels out of the town. But in this one, we were lucky enough to get a hookup for a timeshare condo in downtown Old Town Charleston. So I'll give you a little more uh, context for what that was. You can see there's Columbia, South Carolina, and Florence. No one, and then we zoom in on the screenshot, and then now Charleston comes into view. And we were so lucky, as I said, that this photo was taken. We were able to stay right in downtown Charleston. So now you see a little bit more of the surrounding view of Charleston and the little peninsula that is the downtown Charleston. And we were in this area of Old Town Charleston, which again, super lucky because it would have been very expensive. Where we stayed the night before we stayed at these places was more over on this other side. If you follow 17 and 61 on the left side of the screen, we were staying by that little purple mark on the bottom of the screen there out of town. And that was an okay hotel, but it wasn't this amazing place that we got to stay in downtown where we could just walk around. There's a little coffee shop right across the way. Uh, Restaurants, bars, stuff like that. So yeah, and if you look, and it was taken on this like I said, Queen and State Street, looks to be facing west-ish down that road. And let's go to the photo now. And yeah, that was such a great time. I have a few other photos I'll probably share from the Charleston time because it was so fun. This does satisfy something I've talked about a few times. I like try to find angles, so a low angle here where a street's at the bottom and kind of zoomed out and then zoomed in as you get further. There's no cars obviously driving away, which is nice. The two buildings on the right and left side of the street framing it a little bit, and then even some palm trees you see, and then the sky where there was a sunset, and the sunsets is in the, middle of the screen, and the clouds, orange at there, and then they just, get a little less orange and less orange, and so I really this is a shot I really enjoy, actually. I like that the 2 windows appear on the left of the screen and right of the screen also frame the screen as well. This was, like, on a Tuesday, so I believe that was our first day there, and me and my buddy Tyler were just walking around and just couldn't believe, how beautiful, the scenery was, and so I got down and took this photo. And so one more time, I'll kinda show where in Charleston that was, but yeah, this was a super fun memory, and unfortunately, it was funny, a situation we're on this trip that has nothing to do with the photo, as you can see there it comes in, as you can nothing to do with the photo, but my buddy Tyler had, we were all together and we were all really had a very good momentum going into our comedy trip. We all had one of what we feel like is one of our better shows between all of us, um, either this night or the next night. And then unfortunately he had to leave, back home for a few days. And when he came back, it's funny how that momentum, he's gone like a week, and the momentum it, we had to build it back up again, and it's just crazy how that would go, even though we still had me and, my other buddy Scott, and we were doing comedy, and that actually, when we took this after Charleston, we ended up doing a stupid thing and drove all the way back to Orlando to watch a wrestling show, and then we drove all the way back to Myrtle Beach, basically in a 2-day period, which was crazy. Uh, but this was a great time, and I have a few other pictures, and I for sure I'm gonna share one other picture that I took of, Fort Sumter. So there we are. As I said, this is taken on Monday, February 28th at 2022 at 6:16 PM on the corner of Queen Street, or a corner of Queen and State Street. Anybody interested in any of these photos, they're all on my Instagram, and they're all also for sale as well. I do a podcast, called E Venturecast, which is where the E Venture Prince comes from. Uh, and that's, I've been doing a lot of Patreon episodes recently, but there are free episodes, seasons of free episodes. The whole season of me traveling around the country is on, Spotify and iTunes under eVentureCast, as well as a few years of me working and living on a famous tourist island, Mackinac Island, and what that's all like. I have a Patreon page called and you can search that for on Patreon, eVentureCast, and that is filled with hundreds of hours of or hundreds of video clips and audio clips of, podcasts, me talking about living and working on Mackinac Island, videos from my life on the road as a traveling open mic comic, also videos from my time working and living on Mackinac Island. I've been lucky enough to work with horses the last love animals. So that's been just beyond crazy cool, and I have tons of videos about what that's like. So if you guys anyone's interested, eVenturecast on Patreon, eVenturecast on Instagram, and, eVenturecast on, Spotify and iTunes for the podcast. Thanks so much for, joining me for another episode of E Venture Prince. Hope you guys are enjoying this, and I will see you next episode. Peace.